You work more than your boss, but he earns 10 times more. The richest men you know did not get rich by working. They discovered something that was hidden from you your entire life. You were always told that money is a consequence of effort, that working hard brings reward, that honesty builds fortune. A lie. Machiavelli observed the richest men of Florence and discovered something brutal. None of them got rich by working. They got rich by controlling those who worked. And behind that, there is a truth that was hidden from you your entire life. Observe it with detachment, not to inspire yourself, not to seek comfort, but to recognize what has always been visible, yet rarely spoken aloud. Most men exist in conflict with money. They push themselves to the limit, give up parts of their lives, track every expense, and still remain under its control. They pursue it, plead for chances, pile up disappointments, and ultimately leave this world with the sense that something was lacking. Not ability, not effort, clarity. Machiavelli understood this. He studied rulers, financiers, military leaders, traders, and identified a quiet principle underlying them all. Money does not move toward those who labor. It moves toward those who are indispensable. And indispensability is never random. No one becomes essential simply by performing well. There is a hidden structure behind every man who commands wealth, a mindset intentionally kept out of reach of the majority. Because if it were widely understood, the entire system would collapse. There is something you were never told, something carefully buried beneath narratives of virtue, modesty, and living with less. Money is a psychological instrument, not an economic one. It does not respond to effort, intention, or goodwill. It responds to status, perception, and power. Those who grasp this accumulate wealth. Those who do not serve those who do. This is the boundary between two realities. On one side, men who exchange their time for fragments, who wait to be acknowledged, who believe that being kind produces prosperity. On the other, men who grasp the true dynamics, who understand that value is not created, it is perceived. Who know that the game was never about increasing effort, but about shaping how they are seen, about generating dependence, about becoming unavoidable. In this video, you will learn the invisible law that separates the men who spend their lives asking, waiting, depending, from those who make the flow of money bend to their presence. You will not learn to work more. You will learn to become indispensable, to control value, not chase it, to be the center of the game, not the piece. Because in the end, wealth is not about accumulating. It is about commanding. And commanding requires that you understand the rules that were never written, but have always been operating. The same rules the Medici used to control popes and kings without having a single soldier. But before mastering money, you need to understand why, today, it masters you. You need to see the trap you were placed in since childhood, the narrative that taught you to be weak without you realizing it. The truth about why you work so much and still remain far from real wealth. The masses do not seek money. They seek approval. So they want to be seen as good, honest, hardworking, humble, worthy. The issue is that money does not respond to these qualities. It responds to influence. The ordinary man is taught that wealth comes from effort. He believes that working hard proves value. That is why he sacrifices himself, exhausts himself, gives everything, and still gains little. Why? Because effort is replaceable. Morality is optional. Kindness is something others take advantage of. The weak depend on being recognized, and the one who depends on recognition has already lost. The system trains you for this. It conditions you to follow rules, not to create them. It conditions you to wait for approval, not to define it. It conditions you to ask permission to exist economically. As a result, most people do not focus on creating value. They focus on being accepted. And those who seek acceptance will never be feared. Those who are not feared are not respected. Those who are not respected control nothing, least of all money. While you try to please, someone else is calculating. While you try to be fair, someone else is setting the price. While you are explaining yourself, someone else is defining value. Money does not leave you. You simply never created a reason for it to come. This is the unseen trap. The belief that kindness produces wealth, that honesty attracts prosperity, that virtue purchases power. It does not. It never did. All of human history proves it. The virtuous carry the weight while the strategic command armies. The mindset of the masses functions like a psychological prison. It teaches that wanting more is greed, that charging high prices is arrogance, that setting limits is selfish, and so, each generation repeats the same error. It mistakes humility for invisibility and invisibility for dignity. But dignity without power is nothing more than silent suffering, and silent suffering builds nothing except resentment. Now, before we move forward, something must be done. If what has been said so far has disturbed you, it is because it touched the part that tries to preserve the illusion. If it awakened you, it is because a part of you already knew, but had no words. No one is here by accident. If the reading continues, it is because entry into the field of power has already occurred. So, do not watch as a spectator. Subscribe. Not to help the channel, but because from here on, each video is a step out of the mindset of the masses. And now, leave it marked in the comments as a declaration of identity. My value is not negotiable. Whoever writes stops asking for recognition, assumes their own value, seals the pact. This is not a motivational phrase. It is a psychological marker. When you declare this, you cut the rope that kept you tied to others' approval. You stop negotiating with your own inferiority. You establish a territory. And territories are not conquered with pretty words. They are marked with cold decisions. This is the first. Write it. Declare it. Mark your presence. Because what comes next is no longer theory. It is the code that governs every transaction, every power relationship, every movement of capital in the real world. For Machiavelli, money was never about currency. It was always about dependence. He observed that power does not belong to those who possess more resources, but to those who control the meaning of those resources. In other words, money flows to those who control the perception of value. Value is not real. It is not in the object, the skill, the product, the service. Value is psychological projection. A simple example. The same water is worth almost nothing at the tap and worth a lot in a desert. The object did not change. The context did. Context is power. Those who understand this do not sell effort. They sell identity. They sell scarcity. They sell aura. The man who is difficult to replace becomes expensive. The man who is common becomes disposable. This is the principle. Money responds to distance, not to availability. Those who are constantly within reach diminish their value. Those who justify their price undermine their authority. Those who attempt to persuade give up power. Predictability is economic self-destruction. Need reveals weakness. Emotion opens the door to exploitation. Real wealth emerges when you control how others perceive your position in the world. Consider any individual who builds true wealth. Steve Jobs did not sell computers. He sold inclusion in a tribe of people who saw themselves as different. Every Apple product was more than functional. It was a statement of identity. Anyone who bought an iPhone was not purchasing a phone. They were buying the belief that they belonged to a select group, people who understand design, who value simplicity, who are ahead. The object was merely a symbol. The value lived in the narrative. Coco Chanel did not sell clothing. She sold the idea that certain women were out of reach. She constructed an entire brand around the concept of inaccessible elegance. Each piece was created not only to fit, but to signal distance. To say, I do not need to seek attention. I am the attention. And women paid fortunes not for the material, but for the meaning it carried. They understood that the product was only a vessel. The real value existed in the narrative built around it. In the story, the customer told themselves when they possessed it. When someone buys a Rolex, they are not buying a watch. They are buying the sensation of having arrived. They are buying the right to be perceived as someone who has arrived. The watch measures time no differently than a cheap one. But the perception is entirely different. Money is not objective. It is a result of control over what people believe you represent. When you master that perception, you no longer need to sell. People buy. You do not need to persuade. People persuade themselves. You do not need to reduce the price. People pay what you set. Because price stops being a rational calculation. It becomes a matter of identity. This applies to any field. A lawyer who serves everyone loses value. A lawyer who chooses their cases becomes a legend. A doctor who is always available is seen as common. A doctor who has a waiting list of months is seen as exceptional. Competence may even be the same. But perception changes everything, and perception defines price. The masses work to prove value. The strategist works to create scarcity. The masses explain why they are worth what they charge. The strategist simply charges and lets others justify why they paid. The masses try to be everywhere. The strategist chooses where they appear, and when they appear, everyone stops to observe. This is the difference between chasing money and attracting money, between begging for recognition and commanding respect. And when you understand this mechanism, you realize that it was not invented now. It was discovered, tested, and perfected centuries ago in a specific moment in history by people who changed the game of power forever. Florence, 15th century. The most powerful families fought over land, soldiers, alliances. They believed power was something that could be touched. The Medici thought differently. They understood that whoever finances the war controls who wins it, that whoever lends to the king governs the king, that whoever controls debt controls the throne. They did not seek gold, they created dependence. When the Pope needed cathedrals constructed, whom did he turn to? The Medici. When monarchs required funds for their military campaigns, whom did they plead with? The Medici. They possessed no armies, yet they controlled every army that depended on their money. Their brilliance did not lie in force. It lay in the invisible structure of dependency they engineered around every figure of power. Giovanni di Bicci de' Medici, the patriarch, started as a discreet banker. He did not seek to impress. He did not display wealth. He simply lent. And he was highly selective about whom he lent to. He financed popes. He financed dukes. He financed merchants. and every loan became an unseen chain. When these individuals needed more, they came back. They always came back. And the more they returned, the deeper their dependence grew. His son, Cosimo de' Medici, elevated this strategy further. He understood that visible power provokes envy, it provokes fear, it provokes reaction. So he never occupied official office in Florence. He never adopted a noble title. He never led an army. Yet everyone who held office was indebted to him or to those aligned with him. Everyone who commanded troops relied on him to pay their soldiers. He did not rule. He made rule possible. However, in 1433, his enemies succeeded in exiling him. They believed that removing his physical presence would dissolve his power. It was their greatest error. In less than a year, Florence's economy unraveled. Activity halted. Merchants went bankrupt. The entire city began to feel the absence of the capital the Medici directed. Not because they were the only wealthy family, but because they were the core of the network. Without them, the network collapsed. Cosimo was called back, not because they loved him, but because they could not function without him. And when he returned stronger, because now everyone knew he was not replaceable. His absence had proven that in a brutal way. He no longer needed to demonstrate power. Power had demonstrated itself. This is the difference between having money and controlling money. Having is temporary. Control is structural. Having can be stolen, confiscated, lost. Control cannot be taken, only destroyed along with the entire system. And no one destroys the system they depend on. The Medici became the system. And when you are the system, you do not need to compete. You define the rules of competition. Lorenzo de' Medici, Cosimo's grandson, refined the strategy even further. He invested heavily in art, in culture, in philosophy. He funded Michelangelo. He funded Leonardo da Vinci. He funded Botticelli. Why? Because he understood that controlling culture is controlling the future. Whoever defines what is beautiful, what is valuable, what deserves to be remembered, controls the narrative. And whoever controls the narrative controls the mind. He did not build statues for ego. He built monuments for eternity. So that 500 years from now, when someone thought of the Renaissance, they would think of Florence. And when they thought of Florence, they would think of the Medici. He did not want to be rich. He wanted to be inevitable. He wanted his name to be synonymous with an entire era, and he achieved it. But there was a moment of decline when Piero de' Medici, Cosimo's great-grandson, decided to display power too directly, when he traded aura for ostentation, when he wanted to be seen as powerful instead of being necessary. He was persecuted, exiled, humiliated. The family was almost destroyed. It was then that they understood the final truth. Money is not worth what it buys, but what it makes impossible to refuse. Power is not in gold. It is in the need that gold creates. They returned to the game, but different. More silent, more indispensable, more invisible, and they built dynasties that lasted centuries. Because they learned that whoever creates dependence never needs to ask for anything. Whoever is necessary cannot be attacked. They can only be obeyed. But this does not remain in history. This mechanism operates now in every market, in every negotiation, in every working relationship. Every time someone decides what they are worth, what they charge, what they accept, and there is a precise method to apply it. Now you learn to apply it. First, eliminate the need for approval. If you want to be liked, you will be cheap. Affection is a weak currency. It is given easily and taken away easily. Whoever builds value on affection builds on sand. The first refusal, the first disagreement, the first crisis, and everything collapses. Real value does not depend on likability. It depends on necessity. Second, never verbalize your own worth. The one who explains it is already defending it. The one who defends it is revealing a lower position. The moment you have to enumerate your qualities, you signal they are not self-evident, and what is not self-evident is not valuable enough. Let outcomes communicate. Let your absence register. Let contrast with others expose the gap. But do not be the one who highlights it. Third, limit access to yourself. Scarcity generates myth. Myth generates demand. Demand generates price. Consider anyone you view as important. Do they answer you right away? Are they constantly available? Do they accept every invitation? No. Importance is defined by the cost of access. The more accessible someone is, the less they are valued. Not because it is fair, but because that is how the human mind operates. Fourth, dictate the rhythm. Reply on your terms. Be present by choice. Time is a tool of power. The one who sets the timing of interaction sets the structure of the relationship. If you always answer immediately, you condition others to see you as available. If you always show up, you condition them to see you as waiting. And the one who waits is not pursued. They are merely tolerated. Fifth, do not give everything. Give what is essential. The one who overgives is discarded. The one who provides what is necessary becomes indispensable. This applies to knowledge, to time, to energy, to any resource. Offer enough for them to recognize the value, but not enough for them to reproduce it without you. Always retain a portion that only you control, only you provide, only you understand. Sixth, create strategic dependence. Do not sell something replaceable. Sell something the other cannot live without. This does not mean deceiving. It means positioning. It means choosing the ground on which you compete. If you compete in something anyone can do, you are in the price war. And in the price war, the one who wins is the one who accepts earning less. Do not enter that war. Create another. In relationships, value is not love. It is posture. It is not how much you give yourself. It is how much you preserve yourself. At work, value is not production. It is positioning. It is not how much you do. It is how irreplaceable you become. In business, value is not offer. It is narrative. It is not what you sell. It is what the client believes they are buying. In life, value is not who you are. It is how you become necessary. Remember, money does not buy power. Power defines how much money arrives. When you understand this, you stop chasing and you begin to attract. Because you are no longer selling effort, you are offering scarcity. And scarcity has always been and always will be the basis of all economic value. But there is a moment when all of this stops being technique and becomes identity. A moment when you stop applying and start being. There comes a moment when you stop running and money starts to come. Not because you seek it, but because you have become the source of value. You do not ask for recognition. You allow the world to recognize what it cannot ignore. You do not try to prove. You demonstrate through absence, through silence, through what you do not deliver. This is what most people will never grasp. Once you become indispensable, the world starts negotiating with itself just to access you. People begin questioning the value of your time, the cost of your attention, the price of a single hour of your presence. And the moment these questions arise, the rules have already shifted. You are no longer part of the market. You have become the market. This shift does not occur in a single moment. It is constructed through decisions, one after another. Every time you reject what does not serve you, every time you establish a boundary and hold it without retreat, every time you choose scarcity over constant availability, each of these decisions is a building block. And over time, those blocks become a fortress. Within that fortress, there is no need to raise your voice, no need to compete, no need to persuade. You simply exist. And that existence reshapes everything around you. People adapt. Opportunities transform. Respect emerges. Not because you demanded it, but because you have become impossible to overlook. This is where personal development stops being self-help and turns into the design of reality itself. You do not evolve to please others. You evolve to dominate. And domination is not about controlling people. It is about controlling how you are perceived. It is about making your presence more valuable than your absence. It is about building a reputation so solid that your word alone shifts outcomes. And now, after all of this, only one decision remains. Now you have seen. Money is not a reward. It is a consequence. It follows those who control the meaning of their own presence. If this truth has passed through you, write again in the comments. My value is not negotiable, because from today on, you do not chase, you attract, and the world reorganizes itself around your value. This statement is not symbolic, it is operational. When you write this, you mark a before and an after. You leave the mindset of one who asks and enter the mindset of one who defines. You stop being a product in the market and become the criterion by which the market is measured. Continue your training. Every video here is another layer of understanding. Every idea is another tool in your arsenal. This is not entertainment, it is construction. And construction requires constant presence. So come back. Watch the next one. And the next. Because each of them moves you a little further away from the masses and a little closer to control. The game has always existed. The only difference is that now you know the rules. And whoever knows the rules does not play to compete. They play to win. Always. Comment. Subscribe. The next videos are already on the screen. Continue your mental training